I was like kind of thinking about this before the call. It's like sometimes self-care or self-love, it's not always just like face masks and bubble baths. Like sometimes it is doing something uncomfortable where it's like in the moment, like I've had it too, where I'm like, I really just like don't feel like doing this thing, but like I know that I need to, I know that it'll be good for me. But I've been leaning a lot on dance the past couple years, just kind of like to literally physically move energy through me. And so if I find myself in like really feeling resistance, it doesn't feel good at first, but if you can just kind of have that devotion to knowing what's on the other side, and I always feel better afterwards. I always feel more clear and ready to tackle whatever the thing was that I didn't want to do before.
Welcome to Openly Spoken, the podcast to help you show up, speak out, and be seen. I'm your host, Celia Antonio, women's empowerment mentor, mindfulness expert, and quantum self-love coach. Every week, you'll hear real and unfiltered stories from me and my guests covering topics around spirituality, self-expression, womanhood, healing, love, relationships, and more. My intention with this podcast is to help sensitive, spiritual, ambitious women fully step into their potential so that you can live a life you love with every cell and every fiber of your being. And I get that it's not easy to fit into a box, so I bring in a variety of topics to feed your multifaceted self. You can find me over on Instagram at selfexpressbabe, and info on where to find my guests are always going to be in the show notes below. I am so grateful that you're here, and I invite you to now set an intention, sit back, relax, and receive what is coming through to you on your headphones right now. Take what resonates, leave out what doesn't, and give yourself time to reflect. Thank you so much for being here. Now let's dive in. Hello, welcome to Openly Spoken. My name is Celia. I am your host. I went to a sound bath today a few hours ago, and I'm still feeling that from the sound bath. And I just got done editing this conversation with my friend Michelle, and I'm so excited to share this with you. We talked about self-love and healing and where to start with these two topics. So we talked about doing Reiki on yourself, our experiences with EFT. And before I get into everything else that we talked about, because there's something here that I really want to kind of highlight in this intro so that you kind of get to hear the concept twice, because it's been something that has been very transformative for me. Before we get into that, I'm going to introduce Michelle to you. Michelle is an empath empowerment coach, a holistic wellness guide, and an EFT and Reiki practitioner with coaching certifications from the Institute for Integrative Nutrition and the National Board of Health and Wellness Coaches. Through her business, Karmic Nutrition, Michelle helps sensitive and soulful women see that their creativity and personal power is intimately connected to their state of mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual well-being. So through a blend of holistic wellness coaching, subconscious reprogramming, nervous system regulation, and energy work, Michelle's created her signature framework, Holistic Nourishment. And in Holistic Nourishment, she helps sensitive souls to stress less and thrive more. Sounds so beautiful, right? And when Michelle isn't living her Dharma through coaching, you will find her jamming out to live music, which we get to a lovely little kind of tangent about that towards the end. And that part, when I was editing it, really made me smile that I'm going to make it an IGTV thing. So stay tuned for that. If you go to the show notes right now, there's a link to the podcast Instagram, and you'll find that video on there. So you can find her jamming out to live music. You can find her experimenting with healthy recipes, laughing with friends, or planning her next vacation. And in this episode, like I said, we talk about doing Reiki on yourself. So you're going to get like a little step-by-step process on how to do that. If that's something you're curious with, that's something I was super curious about. So I'm glad that I asked Michelle about that. We both talk about our experiences with EFT, emotional freedom technique, which is a tapping modality where you're tapping on meridian points in the body and you're saying out loud how you feel. And because you're saying out loud how you feel in the beginning of the practice, it kind of feels like the opposite of affirmations, because you'll literally come to the practice saying like, I am stressed out right now. Nothing is working. And throughout the practice, as you end it, you move to something that feels more like affirmations and sounds more positive. But you need to start with being actually honest with what you feel so you can release it out. So that's what EFT is. And we talk about our experiences with that. We talk about filling your own cup, self-love, using breakdowns to allow a new level of depth into your life. And then something that I really wanted to touch on that came through in this conversation, Michelle was talking about how grounded and creative and lit up she feels after she holds the Reiki sessions for clients. And I wrote down a quote that she said here, where she was saying, I don't need to wait for a session with a client to feel this way. And the reason why I want to bring this up is because I was recently in a container called Medicine Muse with someone named Chelsea Jo Huntsman. And one of the big things that she really invited us to do was to, a car is passing by. I hope that didn't get picked up in the audio, but we'll just continue. So one of the things that Chelsea really had us practice was drinking our own medicine. Those are the words she used, drinking our own medicine. So whatever work it is that you give to the world that you like to share, make some time in your calendar to put yourself in your calendar as if you were a client so that you can receive your own gifts from yourself. So whether that is doing EFT tapping on yourself, doing Reiki on yourself, doing some back and forth kind of dialogue coaching with your journal or with your voice notes, or like a video vlog that you record that you then never show to anyone. Anything where you can carve out that space for yourself and you can have a taste for your own gifts. Because in my experience through practicing this, that's a space where your confidence and your excitement to get behind what you're doing and to be able to share it with the people that need it in this energetic way, where when people see you talking about it, they can really see and feel all of you. They're not just hearing your words, they're also feeling your heart and seeing your truth and getting that taste of what it would be like for them to also embody what you're embodying. So essentially, when you do this, when you take in your own gifts, or like Chelsea Jo Huntsman says, when you drink your own medicine, you become a literal embodiment of your work. And so we talk about that a little bit in this session. I guess this is a session in this podcast. So strap right in. Feel free to take some notes and to be open to a new perspective on something like a new practice you can start to incorporate in your healing journey, in your self-development journey. And if you have any questions, my Instagram and also Michelle's Instagram is in the show notes below. And I hope you enjoy. Thank you for being here, Michelle.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm really excited to chat.
Yeah, I'm excited to chat with you as well, especially because stress management. We're going to talk about stress management and how to use Reiki and EFT for that. Mm-hmm. And the stress, I feel like the stress in the world has really heightened with the last crazy 2 years that we've had.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. I mean, it honestly, is kind of what the catalyst for really putting these tools into practice in my own life, and really making sure that I, developed a self-care routine that could support and balance my emotions and my energy, because I needed to, just to
Yeah.
kind of like survive and get through the past few years. I had a lot going on personally, and there's been a lot going on globally. So,
Mhm.
everything, while there were definitely really difficult moments, I was really grateful to have some of these tools and practices to lean on. And that's why I feel so, just inspired to like share it with other people, because of the impact that it's been able to make in my own life.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I can totally relate.
Mhm.
I feel
Yeah,
like,
because people need it more than ever now too. So
yeah,
yeah, it's like we got to get this out.
yeah. And for me, being in lockdown is what really helped me develop a stronger meditation practice because I had
Mhm.
nothing to do. Like, well, I have nothing to do. Might as well sit and close my eyes.
Sit with my thoughts and
Yeah.
be.
And also, it took a whole pandemic for me to realize that I had anxiety.
I was actually just reading one of your posts that was talking about like, I never really thought that I had anxiety before. And
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it wasn't until like my 20s, I guess, when I really started learning about really what anxiety was and how it shows up in your life. And I was like, oh my God, like I've been living my entire life in this state of high anxiety. It was kind of like a combination of like high anxiety and also depression. So,
Yeah.
I mean,
Mhm.
yoga was one of the first things that I started doing that really I noticed kind of a more like balancing it, starting to feel like a little more even keel. And I'm like, okay, like,
Mhm.
and there was also like a yoga class that I took where I think it was like pigeon pose, and I just like started bawling and just
Mm.
crying. And I um I'm a survivor of sexual trauma, and so like that was like
Mm.
really brought it home to me, and like or made me like such a believer in like the mind body connection, and really kind
Yeah.
of continuing to explore this path of like spirituality and wellness and energy and how it all kind of intersects.
Mhm.
Mhm.
So yoga was your gateway drug, kind of.
Yeah. Say like yoga and nutrition, because when I was, I was getting out of a really toxic, unhealthy relationship and was feeling very broken. And I just like, you know, where do I start? Um, and it just made the most sense of like what I'm directly putting in my body. Like I know that I can make a shift by starting there. And I think with, doing holistic health coaching so often, that nutrition is kind of the gateway drug, or something easy and tangible that we can
Mhm.
focus our energy into, and then it really starts to evolve into this journey of like deeper self-love and
Mhm.
self-care through that, and kind of doing a lot of the inner work. Then I'm like, well, who am I? What is important to me? And what makes me feel the best, and how can I make these changes in my life to start aligning with the things that make me feel good? So
Mhm.
yeah.
So then following that kind of question of
Mhm.
how can I do things that make me feel good, is that what led you to then do the work that you are now?
Yeah. Yeah. So after I graduated from the University of Maryland, that like coincided like right around the time of that breakup. And I just really threw myself into this self-discovery, self-love journey, because for so long, I had really just felt this like this hole, this emptiness inside, and like was looking for that love externally. I felt like, oh, if I find somebody who can just like love me in the way that I desire, I'll finally be able to love myself. And just continuing to end up in these unhealthy relationships where I felt like I was like giving everything that I had, and they were still just emotionally abusive, or
Mm.
just never really to the point of violence, but very hurtful and very toxic. And I was just like, why do I keep ending up in these situations? And I just finally like realized that like I can't expect someone else to love me if I don't love me first. And and I have to set the standard. Like after that relationship, and I was just so broken and betrayed because I found out he had been basically cheating on me the entire time. And we had talked about potentially getting married and all of this stuff.
Oh,
So
wow.
it was very heartbreaking. And I had suspected things, and he was like, it just made me feel kind of like I was crazy. And then it ended up it was true the whole time. So I just was like, that's it. I'm never ending up in a situation like this anymore. I'm not allowing myself to be treated this way. And yeah, so that was really the catalyst into my own like self-love, self-discovery journey. And that kind of learning about nutrition, alternative medicine, and like self-healing and holistic healing, it led me to the Institute for Integrative Nutrition, where I received my first health coaching certification. I actually just got my second one last year from the National Board of Health and Wellness Coaches, because that's kind of now becoming like the new standard for health coaching. So yeah, it was very fueled by my own journey and just this desire. I just had this belief that like, I know that I can rise above this. I know that I can heal this. And I just there were definitely some synchronistic moments, like hearing about the Institute for Integrative Nutrition from like a college roommate's friend. And then it kind of like fell out of my awareness for a while. And then I saw something online, and then my aunt like was in the school as well, like that Christmas. So it just like felt like I was just like being guided in this way. And yeah, it's brought me to where I am now. And just like, it's why I feel so passionate about like helping other like sensitive women who struggle with like self-worth and wanting to feel more empowered in who they are and how they take care of themselves, so that they can find balance in this busy world that we live in, and really just take their power back and come back home to themselves. Because that's, when we can know how to care for ourselves, and we know the things that support us, and we can align our life in that way, it really just creates that fertile environment for us to achieve our dreams and our goals and shine as our best selves. So
yeah, especially for people who align more with like feminine energy, like living in this world that's very like go, 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 and like you're only worthy if you do more. It's like, it's very much needed that they have guidance and they have representation of like, there's another way to do things. It's okay to take a break. It's productive to rest.
Exactly. And it's like, you can't, for so long, and I see so many other highly sensitive people just falling into, I was such like a people pleaser, and just, because we do feel the emotions of others so strongly, and so we can overextend ourselves and kind of always be trying to care for everyone else. And especially as women, historically, or just, I see so many stories where it's like women feel guilty putting themselves first, but it's like, well, everything in your life is interconnected to you. And if you're constantly burning yourself out, and to the point of like exhaustion and irritation, like everything else in your life is impacted by that. And conversely, like when you're filling your own cup, when you're nourished, deeply nourished in mind, body, and spirit, not only are you going to thrive, but everything connected to you in your life is going to get some of that energy. And so it's actually a selfless thing that you can do. Maybe it's a combination of both, it's but it's not just impacting you, it's impacting everyone as well.
Yeah, for sure. And also like when we pour into ourselves in that way, we're attracting more aligned relationships. Like you mentioned going through a breakup and how that was like your catalyst and your kind of like portal to healing. And I've had a similar situation, not until I was 29. So it was my Saturn return and a breakup at the same time.
That's That's a
which
lot to
was
navigate.
horrible, which was okay. It was horrible, but also so beautiful. Like
Right.
before that point, I had always been the one to end a relationship, and I'd never been dumped before.
Mm.
And it was like completely unexpected because we had moved to a different state together twice. And like we talked about marriage too, like in the beginning of our relationship. And in the process, like I found myself being able to relate to breakup songs at a whole different level. And I found myself closing my eyes when I hug people, which I still do to this day, but I never did that until that breakup because it kind of gave me this like, it's like a grief. Like grief is not something I'm very familiar with because my parents were very young when they had me. My grandparents were very young when they had my parent. Like everyone in my families is still alive, like everyone that I know. So I have never lost anyone, and like to come to the truth and realization that we're here temporarily, and like the people in your life, you never know, they're here temporarily too, made me just appreciate people more. So
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, it's sometimes we need that breakdown, or we need to be broken open to really let
Yeah.
this new like kind of level of life or depth come through us. And it's right, it's such a representation of like the unified duality of life. It's like
Mhm.
this terrible experience, but in its essence it was also so liberating and such a beautiful like reminder of who you are and what's important. So yeah, I deeply relate to that.
And there's something so like beautiful about being able to keep your heart open when something like that
Mm.
happens, because it's easy to harden and close and try to protect yourself out of fear, especially as sensitive beings.
Yeah, and then drop into that almost like victim mentality, or like, this is just one more thing, or why did this happen to me? And
Yeah.
yeah. Mhm.
Let's talk about the victim mentality.
All right.
That's standing out to me. So first, let's what is your definition of it? And then, especially since you work with sensitive women, I think it's
Mhm.
easier for empaths and for us who like feel other people's emotions to kind of get stuck in victim mentality without realizing it.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I would say I lived the first probably 25 years of my life in somewhat of a victimhood mindset. Um, and I guess how I would define it is just like something, it disconnects you from your power, right? And it puts it outside of yourself and other people and other situations. And so it's making your worth and your joy, your self-love, it makes it conditional. And um, because I had some really difficult things that I moved through, like growing up and just kind of at a young age, just not really having good relationships. And I really took that, I like internalized that, and I made it mean things about me.
Mm,
Um, and I just felt like things just didn't work out for me, or people always just let me down, or um, there were always these like reasons why I was doing something or having these thoughts. I use them as justification for almost my own self-hatred.
yeah.
And so I think being able to shift out of the victimhood mentality is really just about flipping the script. It's just changing the story that you're telling yourself and looking at it through a different lens. And because, that's the great power that we have to um, really just create a new storyline, that one that feels empowering. Even when we go through something hard, it's, what is the silver lining? How is this maybe impacting your growth, or opening you up to a new way of seeing things or a new experience of life. And so really just through, almost like you can transmute any experience
Mhm.
into something more empowering just by changing your perspective on it,
Yeah.
which is sometimes easier said than done, which is why, then kind of the deeper tools of like kind of, I guess, working with a mentor or using something like
Mhm.
EFT or Reiki can come into play if it's something that's like really kind of stuck in there that you can't just mentally reframe.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And sometimes in our journey, we can get to a point where, well, first of all, we have to be aware. We have to be
Mm,
aware of it first, but
definitely.
the awareness isn't enough to shift it. Like, yes, it does alchemize it a little bit, but there can also be a point where we know that we're holding ourselves back
Mhm.
and we're not exactly sure how to get out of our own way.
Mhm. Yeah, definitely. And I mean, that's the real value, right, of having support or someone who can kind of light the path forward for you when you can't really see it yourself, or if you're struggling to believe in your own worth or find the right reframes. Someone who can be your mirror and kind of shine like what you're going through the lens of empowerment, through the lens of opportunity. um, it really helps you over time to kind of rebuild that confidence and see just like your true power to shape your life in the way that you want.
Mhm.
It's just, I used to be such a negative person and have a negative inner dialogue. And like one of my first boyfriends was like, you complain a lot. And I thought like, well, I'm just saying how I feel and like how things are.
Yeah.
And that really kind of like got to me. And then I was like, oh my gosh, like, am I a negative person? And so I just
Yeah.
started becoming, I was always like had a very active internal world, I would say,
Mhm.
but
Mhm.
I really started to be more conscious of the way that I was speaking and the thoughts that I was entertaining. And it's like we get to decide what thoughts take up rent in our head. Like we can
Mhm.
say like, no, like I'm okay, that's a story or that's something that's coming up, but I'm choosing to believe this instead. And sometimes it takes some repetition for those new stories to become your new programming. But as long as you keep at it and you are committed to really wanting to make a change, like you can.
Mhm. Yeah. And that's why support and also relationships are such a great
Mm,
container for growth. Like you said, that you mentioned that basically the person you were in a relationship with mirrored back to you something. And
mhm.
something as simple as someone being present with you and mirroring back to you is so life changing. Like that's how you mentioned my my post about anxiety. Like my husband was the one who was like, that sounds like anxiety. And and the relationship I was in before him, he mirrored back to me like, you say sorry a lot. Like, why are you always apologizing?
Mm,
Like, what kind of
yep.
assholes did you date before me?
I've had someone tell me that too.
Yeah,
Totally.
but it's also like habitual. So like there's a process of becoming aware of it and then like learning a new way of thinking, a new way of behaving, a new way of being, learning that like you do have control over your how you feel.
Mm,
Like
mhm.
it's such an empowering and liberating thing to finally be like, for me, for example, if I ever feel like icky or I'm like, oh, I feel like just laying in bed all day, then I'm like, all right, I need to fill my cup. Like, what can I do? And whereas before it would just be like, yeah, I'll just lay in bed. Like, I'm not gonna do anything.
Mhm. And then probably feel guilty about it and just,
Yeah, and then beat yourself up, and it's a
keep
never
yourself.
ending spiral because of that.
Mhm. And that guilt and shame, it's like literally feels so heavy. And then it's just like, yeah, then you don't want to move even more. And yeah, it really does become a vicious
Yeah.
cycle. Yeah.
Mhm.
That's that's why I feel like I was like kind of thinking about this before the call. It's like sometimes self-care or self-love, you have to, it's not always just like, face masks and bubble baths. Like sometimes it is doing something uncomfortable where it's like in the moment, like I've had it too, where I'm like, I really just like don't feel like doing this thing, but like I know that I need to, I know that it'll be good for me. But and then it's like if you just kind of like, I've been leaning a lot on dance the past couple years. It's just kind of like to literally physically move energy through me. And so if I find myself in like really feeling resistance, it doesn't feel good at first, but if you can just kind of have that devotion to knowing what's on the other side, and I always feel better afterwards. I always feel more clear and ready to tackle whatever the thing was that I didn't want to do before. So sometimes
Same.
it's just doing the uncomfortable thing, even though you don't feel like it, quote unquote, in the moment.
Dance is very powerful, especially like if you close your eyes and eventually you're at a point where something else takes over and like it's like something else is moving you.
You're just along for the ride, kind of just like, yes. Yeah. And from someone, I feel very disconnected from my body, and it's really just been such a beautiful way just to reconnect with myself and like my sensuality and like femininity, and kind of drop into that flow, because I used to just have such distrust in my feminine. And I thought, kind of from seeing like my parents' relationship and just from my own experiences, I kind of felt like feminine was like, and sensitive was equaled weakness. And so I kind of like swung to the other end of the spectrum and kind of like hardened myself, and had a lot of guy friends and played sports. And I was very like, even like when I first started my business, was all just thinking about it like from the masculine perspective of like, what do I need to do? And now it's like really kind of becoming more of like, who do I need to be? And like, how do I anchor this into my being? Like there's still a time and place for the productivity, of course, but like you were mentioning, we are in a very kind of like hyper masculine society that doesn't put enough emphasis on that other side. The energy behind what we're doing is equally, or if not more important than just what we're doing.
And you need like a balance of both energies to be able, it's kind of like your business or your practice or whatever it is you're creating in the world is kind of like a baby. Like you need an egg and sperm to make a baby. Like you need both. It just won't work with 2 eggs and it won't work with 2 sperm, That's
like, so true. Yes. You need that. I think of the yin yang like all the time. It's just like this like little sacred union of the energies. And right, because then if we're too far and on either side, you're either burning out or you're getting nothing done. These are like
so true.
Two in the head, 2 in the emotions.
And for me, I don't know if you can relate to this, but when I started my business and even this podcast, like I was very much in the masculine side, and then I learned the more feminine way of doing things, and then I like completely dropped the masculine and was way too much in the feminine. And I'm still now in the process of like getting to the balance, because too much structure, like I end up going back to old habits of like asking too much of myself, and of like for example, yesterday I woke up and I was really tired. I went for a walk and then I was like laying on my couch and I was exhausted, and I like forced myself to get up and like do some content creation. And then after that, I was like, let me take a break and listen to a sound bath. I listened to a sound bath in my bed at like 11, passed out, and I didn't wake up until 5.
Oh my gosh.
Because I needed that rest.
It sounds like you
and last night I had this dream where I've been having dreams the last 3 days. I don't know if it's the Scorpio eclipse full moon situation, but I've been having these dreams that I've been kind of revealing subconsciously like what's happening. And in my dream, I had this realization that I still have this like little bully within me that's like, no, you're tired, but you're building a business. Like you need to get up and take action.
Mm.
And it's just interesting that like even though you can be someone who is helping others with self-love, or someone who has found this journey a long time ago, like it's always a journey, it's always a process. And it's just about not judging yourself when
Mhm.
things come up, and like giving yourself what you need.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like I've definitely, and still something that, I'm kind of working through is I felt this pressure when starting my business. Like I need to be healed, or I need to have all of
Mm,
this stuff figured out before I can help people, before I can lead people through. And then it's, the funny thing about the healing journey, you heal one thing, usually you end up coming back to revisit it in a new way, in some way. But
mhm,
like, there's always these like new layers that we're unfolding. So it's like the healing is never done. So there's never going to be, I'll be waiting forever to help people if
mhm,
I waited for that. So I think just allowing ourselves to show up as we are, even when we're still moving through things ourselves, like it doesn't mean that like the last 32 years of my life, like I still have so much that I've gained from my own experiences and the things that I've studied and the mentors that I've worked with, that I can help people right now with
mhm,
those things. And I can still be learning and growing in other ways, and then bring that in once as I'm learning it
mhm,
to help people even more. And so,
mhm,
yeah, it's definitely been a process of kind of just, I guess, self-trust in a way, or just not releasing the perfectionism. Perfectionism was
mhm,
like something that I really struggled with a lot. And it's actually something that EFT and hypnosis um, has helped me to shift a little bit, as well as kind of embracing more of like the feminine way of business as well.
mhm. And what I love about EFT is like you're voicing out how you actually feel. Like I remember in my first EFT session, I was kind of like, this is kind of weird because I feel like I'm doing the opposite of an affirmation. Like I'm
I know
like,
it feels wrong. You're like, but
yeah,
I don't want these things. I don't want
uh-huh,
to feel this way.
uh-huh. But then as
Um,
you move through, like I remember the first few times that I did it, I didn't really feel much. So then the third time I was like, I'm gonna keep doing these rounds of saying what I'm actually feeling, and then like integrating what I want to feel until I feel something. And it only took like 10 minutes.
yeah,
I
it's
was like, wait, what?
amazing. It's
Like, this is
so
magic.
amazing. And like, yeah, and it's such a powerful tool, and it's so accessible because, right, you can pretty much do it whenever. Like all you need is your body to do it, where it's like you don't need
Mhm,
to, I don't know, have certain like tools or things to make it happen. And so it's, yeah, anytime that you're feeling triggered, you can like go to the
mhm.
bathroom and do some tapping, or I do it all the
Yeah.
time when I'm like at a social event or something. I'm like, I need to go to the bathroom and like tap through this anxiety that I'm feeling. Like, I don't know about you, but like after the pandemic, it felt like all of this work that I did to overcome social anxiety was like
Mhm.
back in action. And I was like, oh my God, like I just feel like hypersensitive to everything around me. It was like
Yeah.
kind of unbearable.
Yeah. Same. I definitely take breaks just to breathe in the bathroom all the time when I'm in social situations, unless I'm with like my best friends because they don't make me
Hmm.
feel that way. But if I'm like somewhere where I don't really know anyone there, yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, exactly.
And that's the stuff like social anxiety I didn't know I had until the pandemic. But EFT definitely helps a lot. Breath work helps me a lot too. And what I love about these modalities like EFT, breath work, yoga, meditation, like you can do it anywhere at any time. You don't need
Hmm.
a single thing. You could be in a prison cell and do
Hmm.
these things. Like
Hmm.
once you that's why, like, with people who are business owners, like, we really see the value in investing in like strategies or a coach or an assistant or all these things that are a little bit more um what's the word, like accepted or something to
Mhm.
invest in. But when
Mhm.
you also, like, yes, that's good, but when you also can invest in like learning how to meditate, learning how to breathe, like that's information that is a tool then for you for the rest of your life. Like no one can ever take it away.
Mhm. And it's like those efforts, it's not just about like the benefits that you receive in the moment, because like we are actually like changing our brain chemistry and reprogramming our nervous system. Like that's the thing when I talk to people about like stress management, and it's like you're building this resilience too, like over time the efforts compound, and so you start to actually be able to hold more and
Hmm.
feel less over time, so that you don't, you can still do it in the moment, but you might not need to as often, because I mean, you still want to keep building that, right?
Hmm.
But I think that's such a beautiful thing, is that it just compounds over time. And that's like the power of consistency and having like a regular practice.
Hmm.
Like, literally changes you from the inside
Yeah.
out.
Yeah. One of the modalities that we didn't talk about that I'm curious about
Mhm.
is Reiki. And specifically, I'm curious about, I've heard that you can do Reiki on yourself.
Mhm. Mhm.
How do we do that?
Yeah, so I kind of think about Reiki as like a deep meditation meets a supercharged prayer.
Mm,
And so it's like our bodies are these energetic antennas, right? Like we have life force energy all around us. We're seeing now from like quantum physics, quantum mechanics, that we are all existing in this unified energy field, right? And we're also seeing that consciousness has the power to alter that energy field, or like the quanta that make up the field and everything that we see in the physical. And so it's like huge,
mhm,
huge to be able to understand that just with our conscious intention that we can create a shift in the energy within ourselves or within another person, even at great distances. So there's like string theory, unified field theory is like speaks to the energetic web, and then quantum entanglement, or like the non-locality principle, essentially says that like one particle on can impact another particle even at great distances
mhm,
and correlate their behaviors. And so that's how distance Reiki healing can work,
mm,
when two people are dropped in and kind of attuned to one another's energy. We're not separated by time and space. And so I think about if you were to do it to yourself, I like to visualize like the pillar of white or golden light coming through. Like I just kind of picture it beaming down from the heavens through the roof of my home. And I'll usually guide a client through this at the beginning of the Reiki session to like kind of open the channel, open the crown chakra, and bringing in this healing energy into the body. And then I visualize it traveling down, kind of like as if your spine was like an energetic highway, and it connects all throughout, your body. So I picture this white light or golden light, or maybe you like to picture it as like another color. I just tell people,
mm,
whatever is feeling good for you. There's no real wrong way, but picture it flooding into your body and spreading out throughout like your veins and out through. You have chakra points on your hands. And so I like to picture kind of like this little like swirling kind of pool of energy then in my hands. I like to like rub them together. And if you rub your hands together very fast and create that friction, and then like gradually pull them apart, like you can just feel that energetic tension there. And so I'll do that, and I'll kind of just visualize this light coming through the pillar, down my spine, throughout my body, and coming out my hands. And then there are certain hand positions. So, but it basically just works down your entire body. So starting at the crown, you want to use both of your hands together at the same time on whatever area you're working on. So I'll put both my hands on the top of my head, then you put them over your eyes, over the ears. That one you can actually split. Then I put them like both over the throat, over each shoulder, over the heart, and kind of just work your way down the body, solar plexus, chakra, root. So you go down the front of the body, going down like the tops of your legs, the calves, and then the bottom of your feet as well. You have large chakras on the bottom of your feet too, because we draw up energy through the earth. And we have really large pores in our feet. I don't know if you've ever taken an essential oil class, but they'll tell you to put essential oils on the bottom of your feet for this reason.
Yeah.
And so then you can go back through kind of on the back side of your body. So then touching on the back of your neck and back of your shoulders, and just kind of work through the back side of the body and just visualize. And I also, before you begin this practice, just set the intention or say a prayer and just ask, mine just goes something like this, like angels, spirits, guides, ascended masters, archangels, cosmic beings of the light and only the light. I ask for your energetic support and assistance during this Reiki healing session. Allow the energy to be guided where it most needs to go to liberate, healing, and any any stuck energy that is keeping me from my highest potential and empowerment. And so I say that prayer to kind of bring in other energetic support. And really our job, Reiki, we're not doing so much as being the channel and allowing this energy to just flow through, and just through our conscious intention with aligning with that desire, and then inviting in these other energies to assist us. You just kind of drop into this meditative state. And if sometimes you find that your maybe mind is racing too much at first, like you say your prayer and you're trying to do it, like, but it helps, like do like a little meditation at first and just picture that pillar of white light coming in, and then start going through using your palms like on the actual surfaces of your skin, and can help to just visualize. Like when I'm in a certain chakra, I kind of visualize, it's almost like, those side like washing machines where like it's like swirling around. Like I picture like the white golden light just like swirling around within the color of each energy center, as if it's like washing and cleaning. Yeah. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. In the beginning, I had my eyes closed and I was also like visualizing that energy come, and it felt really good.
Yeah, it's actually something that I don't do enough, because like every time that I do a Reiki session with another person, like it's beneficial for me too. Like I feel just so at ease and relaxed afterwards, and like open. Oftentimes like I'll go into like writing or doing something, I find so much creativity coming through, and I'm like, I don't need to wait for a session with a client. Like I can be doing this like to myself all the time or whenever. So it's beautiful. And when I first got certified, I was fully intending to do Reiki in person. And then the pandemic happened. And I was like, oh, how is this going to work? And that's what prompted me to kind of study a little bit more about it and try. And it was really just through the sessions of working with people, just the feedback that I would get, and them talking about the different sensations that they would experience within their body. Or I had a woman that like cried, and I would get these kind of like intuitive insights, like almost like images, or hear a word or see a picture of something, and it wouldn't make sense really to me, but as soon like I would just kind of push myself to be like, I don't know if this means anything to you, but this is kind of what I was picking up on. And every time they're like, oh my God, yes. Like just yesterday or 2 days ago, I had a woman who when I was on her third eye space, I had this visual of her like at the beach and just like so happy, and like the waves crashing, and like, that doesn't mean anything to me. I try not to get too in the mind and just stay open to like just receiving that. And after we finished the session, she was like, yeah, like when we first started, I just kept getting this sense that I should go to the beach, or I should just like,
Mm.
I was like having this experience about being at the beach, and I was like, oh my gosh, like I was getting that too. And I end every Reiki session with a card pull, and the card that like literally I was shuffling it, like flew out. It was Water Guardian. And we were just like, okay, you need to get near some water, whatever your spirit is like guiding you to. And she's like, well, I am a water sign, and it's very, cleansing and purifying for anyone in general. There's studies that just even looking at water helps to change like your brain chemistry and create a deep sense of relaxation. So it's just experiences like that just started blowing my mind. And I'm like, okay, there's definitely something to this. Like, I don't even fully understand exactly how it's working, but that's what prompted me to try to understand more about it, like quantum physics and mechanics, and really think like there is something to this. We might not be able to fully explain it, but we have these core principles that are starting to explain kind of how we can transfer energy between each other and entrain with one another's energy, kind of like sync up and assist one another's healing just through that conscious intention and awareness.
It's funny how when we can feel that stuff like that is real, it's still not really proven. Like, but when that like masculine energetic of like putting it into thought and like proving it with science, then people are like, oh, this is real.
Yeah, like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, and that's been a struggle, is because I just, my boyfriend is a scientist. I have very science-minded friends, like a friend that works at NASA, and another friend that's, she's very kind of from that cerebral perspective. And I feel like I'm constantly kind of coming up against, sometimes I find it frustrating of needing to like justify or try to explain what I feel, and so intuitively understand, but it's like just another one of those things where it's like, oh, if I can flip the script here from like, why don't they believe me, and being frustrated, to, oh, here's an opportunity for how can I learn to explain it in a way that makes sense to them, so that we can still, kind of then start to see eye to eye. And we live in an exciting time where it's like science and spirituality are starting to really kind of like converge. And yeah, it's just very, very cool to kind of see people changing their minds about things that used to seem out there, woo woo, or magic.
So I have a few questions that I like to ask at the end of each episode, and then we'll dive into where people can find you and learn more about working with you.
Sounds good.
Okay, so the first question is, what does self-love mean to you?
Yeah, so I think self-love is a deep devotion to your own happiness and well-being, and honoring your energy and your personal truth, like even if it doesn't make sense to other people. Or we kind of mentioned earlier, it's like sometimes self-love is doing something uncomfortable or difficult, but it's like if it's benefiting your soul's growth and overall happiness, then that to me is self-love.
Beautiful answer.
Thank you.
And then finish this phrase: the way to my heart is.
Ooh. So the first thing that came to mind was pasta.
I love that this question always gets like fun answers.
But then I had like something in my mind was like, no, I wanted to say music. So if you play good music and you make a mean pasta, like just consider it over.
That brings back memories of like cooking Italian food with like music playing that's like really beautiful in the background.
Yes, I love cooking while listening to music, because I just think about, food is just, you can infuse that energy into what you're making. Yeah.
Yeah. When do you feel most alive?
I think traveling, I think seeing new places, meeting new people. Like I love to meet people and just talk and hear their stories and hear their life lessons and wisdom that they have to share. And trying like new foods. Yeah, I love travel so much. It makes me feel so free and alive. And then music festivals would be a close second because I feel like everyone just kind of like drops like their like real people personas, or like how they show up at work or like in life. And it's like everyone's like inner kid comes out and it's like everyone's
So
so like
true.
open and playful and not taking things so seriously and wearing wacky costumes. And I'll tell you, like the amount of like crazy like synchronicities and manifestations that happen like at music festivals, it really just like makes me think like, oh, if we were just could take this attitude and the way that we show up here, like back home and like in regular life, like just think of what we could create and like achieve, because there's such a strong sense of like community and people looking out for one another and connectedness too, that I feel that like, oh, like hopefully at least it's like being seeded in some way and then people are taking it back out into spreading it into the collective, into other areas.
Yeah, I love that. And what's so interesting, like what you bring up about like it creating a community and everyone's like supporting each other. It makes me think of like tribes, how music and dancing is such a big part of like tribal life.
I know. And then we're staying in tents and it's like really like living in like teepees or like being connected out in nature and just, it's one of my favorite things in the world.
That feeling too. I don't know how to describe it, but I love the feeling when there's an artist singing a song and they put the microphone out to the crowd and like everyone is singing all at the same time. Like it brings me to tears, like happy tears almost every time, because like I feel like connected with the people around us and it's just like I'm getting excited even now.
It's like this euphoria of just like oh, we're all connected, we're all in this moment together having this experience and this palpable like joy. It's so beautiful. Music brings people together. It's been actually a huge healing force in my life when I was going through really difficult things. I felt like I had no one sometimes. Music was always there.
Yeah, same here. And that's why if I like look back to what I listened to when I was in middle school, I'm like, this is so depressing.
No wonder I was depressed. No,
but some of them, like my husband and I sometimes look at like rock songs from the 90s or 2000s, like their music videos on YouTube, and we're like, oh my God, this is embarrassing.
When I was driving the other day and I like never listened to the radio, but like my phone wasn't fully charged, or like I needed it to be charged because I was trying to listen to a podcast episode, and so I can't like listen to music and charge at the same time. So I was like, oh, I'll listen to a radio, and it was on this like alternative rock station, and Breaking Benjamin song came on. I don't know if you know it. I will not bow. I will not bow. And I was just like, just rocking out. I was just like taking me back, to high school or to some like, difficult times. So I'm just like, I still know all the words, and it just like felt so good to kind of go back to that place.
I probably know that song, and I just don't know the band, because we say I will not bow. Sounds very familiar.
I was like, don't ask me to sing it, but look it up and send me a message after.
Okay, I will.
You'll be like, what this is intense. No. Very different to the kind of music I listen to now. What's interesting too, it's like the music that we're attracted to is such a mirror to our energetic, like how we're feeling, right? Because our energy actually like entrains with music. And so when we feel that
Yeah.
strong resonance to a song, it's because like we are literally on that same energetic level as it.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. One more question.
Okay.
What is your favorite part about being a woman?
I think just so like how inherently sensitive and intuitive we are, you know, it's just such a natural like part of our true nature. And yeah, and I think, you know, for a long time I didn't like my feminine, or I felt such like discomfort, or I felt like it was like equated like weakness, or just people preying on me and taking advantage of me. And so I really resented my feminine for a long time. And now it's kind of been, the last few years have been this journey to kind of reconnect with that side of myself and integrate that side. And so I'm really just finding so much appreciation and beauty too, and like the feminine body, and like just so like soft and like really like a work of art. And
Oh, that's beautiful. And where can people listening find out more about you and find out how to work with you?
Yeah, so the best place to connect with me would be on Instagram. It's at Karmic, KARMIC_nutrition. Or you can check out my website, www.karmicnutrition.com. Yeah, I also have a Facebook, but to be honest, I don't really utilize Facebook all that often anymore. So Instagram, it would be probably the best.
Okay. And that link will be in the show notes.
So thank you so much.
Thank you. This is a beautiful conversation.
I know. I'm like, oh my gosh, I could just keep talking to you for a while.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Openly Spoken. I know that there's an abundance of content online, so I really appreciate you giving me your ears today. If this episode shifted something for you, please share this with a friend or write us a podcast review if you're listening to this on iTunes so that more people can find this. If anything shifted for you from this episode that you want to have a conversation about, I would love to hear from you. Just send me a DM over on Instagram at selfexpressbabe, and that is in the show notes. Thanks again for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.